Now, we're already 12 rounds into the breathtaking 2024 Formula E season. Jaguar's Nick Cassidy and Porsche's Pascal Wehrlein have wowed us with spectacular performances on the track. Teams like Jaguar and Porsche have been at their best this season, but there's one team's performance that's left many scratching their heads. The reigning champions, Envision Racing, have shocked everyone with their awful performance this season. Their season has been the complete opposite of their last season's campaign. The Silverstone-based team currently ranks P8 in the standings. Mind you, the championship has 11 teams. So what's the reason behind their awful form? Well, stay tuned until the end of this video to find out why Envision is struggling. Now, Envision's racing season is a far cry from last year's championship winning campaign. From the 12 races this season, the team has only scored 49 points. That's a mere average of 4 points per race. To put that into perspective, at this point last season, they had 176 more points. It's an unbelievable fall from grace for a team that boasts of using one of the best technical packages on the grid thanks to their partnership with Jaguar. But what is causing their sudden decline in performance? Is it just bad luck, or are there bigger issues at play? Well, if you thought it was just one factor, then you're dead wrong. It's a combination of several factors, and we're going to explore them in detail. First up, Nick Cassidy's departure from the team was the beginning of their downfall. Losing a top driver is always tough, but in this case, it's been particularly painful for Envision. Cassidy was a master at working with his team to execute race strategies, especially in those tricky early peloton races. His move to Jaguar has dealt a huge blow to Envision. But here's the thing, it's not just about Cassidy. Sebastian Buemi, who's still with the team, scored 105 points last season. However, this year, the Envision star driver has only managed to score 24 points so far. His teammate Robin Freins has 23 points. We can acknowledge the fact that both drivers missed 2 races in Berlin due to a clash with a World Endurance Championship event, but even accounting for that, it's a significant drop in performance. So what's changed for these experienced drivers? Now, let's look at the bigger picture in Formula E. This is the second season of the Gen 3 rules, and we're seeing an interesting trend in the team's performances. Almost every manufacturer is beating its customer team quite convincingly. Porsche is ahead of Andretti, Nissan is outscoring McLaren, and DS Penske has twice as many points as Maserati MSG. But the most shocking of them all is the huge gap between Jaguar and Envision. Jaguar has a whopping 250 more points than Envision, despite them using the same technical package. That's not just because of a few bad races or occasional poor performances, there's something more fundamental going on here. To understand what's happening to Envision, we must look at their relationship with Jaguar. The two teams are known to have a strong partnership with engineer exchanges and data sharing. But here's the thing. Manufacturers can't hand over everything to a rival, even if it's using their technology. They've invested heavily in development, and they're going to keep some advantages for themselves in order to avoid being beaten by their customer teams. While talking to the media, Envision's team principal, Sylvain Philippi, highlighted this, saying, "Clearly the manufacturer didn't like that, being beaten by its customer teams, and clearly they're trying to find ways to make sure that doesn't happen again." Well, last season, customer teams like Envision had a chance to shine because the manufacturers were dealing with teething problems from the new Gen 3 rules. The playing field was more level, and in some ways, the customers had an advantage because they didn't waste time on development dead ends. But this year, the manufacturers have gotten their act together. They have more resources, bigger budgets, and crucially, more test days. This means they can fine-tune their setups and understand the quirks of things like tyre behavior much better than the customer teams. Philippi pointed out that they're starting to feel the effects of not being a manufacturer. They, the manufacturers, have test days that we don't have, so we're starting to feel the effects of not being a manufacturer. For example, the tyres this year behave differently to last year, but without test days, it's very difficult to get on top of that, and there are many other things, Philippi said. This leaves us with a very intriguing question. Is the current Formula E structure creating an unfair advantage for the manufacturers, or is it just the nature of motorsport, where teams with the most resources often dominate? Another factor to consider is how racing itself has evolved. Last year, Envision was one of the first teams to understand and strategically play the peloton races well. But now every team has figured it out. The strategies that gave Envision an edge last season are now common knowledge. And it's not just about strategy. The level of risk in these races has gone up dramatically. Some drivers are taking huge gambles in battles within the pack. This has worked well for drivers like Oliver Rowland, but it's also made life much harder for teams like Envision. The grid has also gotten much tighter. We're talking about hundreds or even thousands of a second making the difference in qualifying. In Monaco qualifying, Frines missed out on P8 by 0.002 seconds. This tight competition means that if you start in the midfield, you're at huge risk of damage, not scoring, or even retirement. This has happened to Robin Frines and Buemi in several races this season. However, it's not just about the physical challenges on the track, there's a psychological factor at play too. Many drivers, including Buemi and Frines, hate the pack racing structure of many Formula E races this season. In fact, it's estimated about 80% of the grid dislikes this style of racing. But why? Well, it's extremely stressful with never-ending close battles and the ever-present risk of a race-ending collision. It's completely different from the more strategic pace management style of racing that many of these drivers are used to from other series. For Frines, there's an added layer of complexity. He's still dealing with the psychological aftermath of a nasty hand injury from last season. The risk of hand injuries in wheel-to-wheel or wheel-to-barrier contact is well known in Formula E, and it's clearly on Frines' mind. In Misano, he let go of the steering wheel following contact with Sam Bird and Antonio Felix da Costa. There have been races where both Envision drivers have been way off the pace in qualifying, and this leaves them further back on the grid, right in the thick of the mayhem. Envision's form has been poor this season, but it hasn't been all that bad. They have occasionally shown flashes of their potential. Buemi finished P2 in Mexico City and Frines finished second in Diriyah. They have the pace but lack consistency. While talking to the media, Felipe acknowledged that his drivers are struggling to adapt to this new style of racing. My drivers have really been caught by that, and if you speak to them directly, they'll tell you it's not the kind of race they're used to. They're very good race drivers, but this is different, and clearly some drivers this year have embraced that kind of racing better than others around the grid. That's quite clear, Felipe said. Well, it's a different kind of racing that requires a different skill set. So, do you think Formula E should change its race format to suit the preferences of the majority of the drivers, or is it up to the drivers to adapt to the demands of the series? Another reason for Envision's poor campaign this season is the scheduled clashes between some Formula E Prix and World Endurance Championship events. Both Buemi and Frines compete in both series, meaning that when the two events are on the same weekend, Envision ends up losing its drivers. In Berlin, the team had to bring in Joel Eriksson and Paul Aron to fill in for Buemi and Frines, who were at the 24 Hours of Le Mans. Although Eriksson finished P9, the effect of these driver changes affects the team's performance greatly, and this is something the team needs to address if they want to improve their performance. The driver's performance is also affected by competing in multiple series. The switching from one type of racing to another during consecutive weekends affects them both mentally and physically. So, what do you think Envision should do to improve the situation? Should they ask for total commitment from Buemi and Frines, or should they seek the services of other drivers who will be fully committed to the team? Now, what should Envision do to go back to their winning ways? Last season, the team proved that they have what it takes to be champions, but in the fast-evolving Formula E world, past success doesn't guarantee good results in the future. They'll need to adapt, innovate, and even take some risks if they want to become title contenders again. Whether that means a change in drivers, a new approach to race strategy, or finding ways to close the gap to the manufacturers, something needs to be done. So, will Envision bounce back, or is this the beginning of a long period of struggle? Share your thoughts in the comment section down below and let's have a discussion. Now that marks the end of our video for today. Make sure to like and subscribe to the channel for more great Formula E content.